Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome all of you joining today's Dive and Thrive series, Short Sale and Forbearance. I'm Pauline Lam from Cotaroti, your co-chair, 2020 co-chair Education Committee, West and Gabriel Valley Realtors. A few housekeeping tips. All participants will be muted, and should you have any questions, please enter it into the chat box. Speaker will answer it to you during the Q&A section. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, West and Gabriel Valley Realtors. Today, this is my great honor to bring you our great speaker, and we never had this good chance to invite her, Miss Shelly Cofini. She has been our speaker a few years ago, right, in San Gabriel Board, and we really have great honor and so happy with you. Shelly is a great strategist, speaker, coach, and with so many positive comments and coach a lot of successful realtor in the industry. And Shelly is a seasoned veteran focused on coaching and business strategy while developing go-to-market pace to disruptive technologies and sales. And she's also a technology enthusiast, intuitive coach, strategist, speaker. This I mentioned already. And she was graduate from both Cal Poly, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Organization Development, and the University of Santa Monica, earning a Master of Arts, Spiritual Psychology degree. That was totally life turning in so many years. And Shelly is in coaching career so many years. We want to welcome, and please help me to have a very warm welcome to have Shelly to give us great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. And I want to introduce my business partner, Amy Sessner. Amy, like me, has been in the business a really long time. She has her undergrad degree in psychology and MBA from Pepperdine. We've both been in the business over 30 years, and this is where everybody goes, but that can't be possible because look how young we are. So we're just excited to share this information. So a couple of things I want to share with everybody that's on the webinar today. First and foremost, everything that we're sharing with you today is online on a learning platform called Udemy. And we'll attach the link in the chat box so that you guys can find that course. This is a great course to share with any of your sellers or homeowners or previous clients that might be in a distressful situation. So they can go and take this course online, and it's 100% free. In addition, at the end of this webinar, I will share this PowerPoint with the board, with Pauline and Fong, for them to share it with all of the attendees today. So Amy and I wrote this course at the beginning of COVID back in March. Our goal was to help homeowners that were going through some challenges. And, you know, we still see that in some pretty large numbers. So we're not going to go through every slide today, but we do want to make sure that you all walk away with an understanding about the forbearance process, the short sale process, and the loan modification changes as a result of forbearance programs that are in play now. And then we're happy to answer any questions that we have at the end. So say hi to Amy, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. What we're going to cover today are just some highlights on these topics. So we'll start with, and we really designed this course for consumers, right? At the first moment when they realize they can't make their mortgage payment, what are the options that they have? Obviously, we know as real estate professionals that sometimes those options lead to them selling the home in order to prevent some type of corrective action like foreclosure. So we'll talk about what happens when they can't make their mortgage payment, some current legislation that is assisting people. We'll talk about the lender collection process, whether or not they qualify for a deferment, forgiveness, or forbearance. A brief overview on the loan mod process. We could do a whole class just on that. And then when they owe more on their home than what it's worth today, and some strategies of what to do. We'll review the short sale process, some key tips for selling short sale, the Fresh Start program, which we've relabeled now, getting back on track. And then we'll go over all of the resources that we're happy to share with you guys. So there's a ton of websites and resource sites to get current, accurate information to share with your clients. And then, of course, we'll close out with frequently asked questions. So we'll dive in to just some language that I think is really important. So Amy, do you want to kind of just, we don't have to read it, but talk about some of the key things like hardship?
Yeah.
Tell us about hardship.
Let's go back to the start of COVID. We're in a different environment than previously. Hardship is when a homeowner is not able to make their mortgage payment. Previously, it was death, divorce, or disability. With COVID, with the stop of many people's livelihood with employment, the hardship was that the homeowner was not able to make a payment because they were not making money or not even able to go to work. In all mortgage lenders send out a mortgage statement, and that's what essentially identifies what they owe on their mortgage each month. Most homeowners are not familiar with the mortgage term other than they go to their mortgage lender to get a loan. A mortgage servicer is the servicer who processes their payments on a monthly basis. And it was the mortgage servicers that really came forward during COVID to reach out to homeowners and say, if you can't make your payment, we don't necessarily need proof of a hardship. You just have to say, I'm affected by COVID. And they were able to allow homeowners to stop, forbear payments during this hardship. What you're going to find when you start having conversations with your homeowners is many people that you're not aware of are still in forbearances. And that was either previously it's to reduce suspend payments. During COVID, with the legislature, they first took 3 months and said, you don't have to make payments, we'll give you this period of time. What the lenders are coming back to do now with some businesses back at work or people being able to go back to some of their normal livelihoods is the lenders are going back to their normal forbearance, deferment, delay or skip a payment, moratorium, which suspends their payment. We will talk more about foreclosure in our upcoming section, but of course, we all dealt with this in 2007, 8, and 9, where the majority of homeowners were unable to make their payments for periods of time, and lenders just processed the foreclosure period.
So let's talk a little bit about the CARES Act. Some of you have seen this on the news. You've seen articles released about this. The CARES Act came into place during the beginning of COVID. It was an immediate measure to assist people that were not able to make their mortgage payment. So I think it's important to understand from March to today where we stand. We still have 4.7 million homeowners that are in some type of forbearance or forgiveness program. Many of those programs will expire at the end of the year. Of the 4.7 million homeowners that are in one of these programs, 42% of those have moved on to become seriously delinquent. So when we say seriously delinquent, we're talking about a delinquency of 60 or 90 days or greater. So really what we're saying is all of these folks that were impacted at the beginning of COVID, things haven't necessarily gotten better for them. And in fact, many of them have moved on to an escalated state of delinquency. So when their forbearance program ends, we're going to see escalated collection activity by the servicers. So we're not going to do a deep dive into the CARES Act because we've kind of circumvented a lot of those by time. But I do want you guys to be familiar with the CARES Act and the distinguish between a federally backed loan and a non-federally backed loan and how the servicers are handling it. And I think it's just important. So we're going to skip a couple of slides here so that we can really dive into the meat of what we want to talk about. But know that I'm going to share this with you guys so that you can go back and read it on your own. And also to note, as a real estate agent, this is really where it's, I think, imperative, is also to distinguish the difference between a single family residence and multifamily and how they are treated in the CARES Act and how the servicers are handling them in the forbearance and or deferment process. So there is a big difference between how single family owner occupied residences are being handled and multifamily are being handled. And we would encourage agents, anybody that's working the multifamily sector, I think is we're going to see a lot of movement over the course of the next, I would say 6, 12, 18 months. Just because they've been hit the hardest. Not only are these investment properties, but their tenants have not been able to pay rents either. So we've got, forbearance relief on the mortgage side, tenants, eviction moratorium on the tenant side. And so you've got, I think, the perfect opportunity to see people wanting to transition out of those types of properties. Anything you want to add to that while we're jumping through this?
When you're speaking to homeowners, the best thing is to have a clear conversation, because if you haven't touched base with some of these homeowners since the start of COVID, it's a great opportunity just to reach out to see if there is anything you can do to assist them, because we're dealing with people that might be in denial, regret, or just disbelief. And if you are there as the real estate agent to offer assistance through your board, through even this program or many programs that are out there, you're going to be the one that they're going to come forth to receive assistance from. With asking for help from your lenders, as Shelly identified, there are different levels that were offered. Traditionally, servicers want to keep families in their home, and that's why they offered a single family residence, and that's why that level would make sense. They generally don't offer assistance to secondary homes as readily or to multifamily homes. They did offer different levels, which we will discuss, but be the person to be in contact with that homeowner, and you will be the shining star.
So if you have somebody that's still in distress or just entering a distress situation, these are 3 questions that we want to equip them with to address their servicer. Many times folks are nervous about contacting their servicer, especially if there might be language challenges or just not understanding, the role that the mortgage servicer plays when it comes to holding the actual mortgage itself. So we always want to equip people with the right strategy and the right approach. These would be questions that we would give to a homeowner to start the conversation. And then know that based on who their mortgage servicer is, what kind of loan they have, what kind of property they have, those are all things that may cause the solution to be different, if you will. So let's talk about the lender collection process. And just again, some of these are frequently used terms. I want to make sure that you guys are all up to speed on the nomenclature, the actual words that the servicers use. They have their own language, and really how some of these key topics play into how lenders manage the collection process. So there's just a couple of things here. From a real estate agent, we are already familiar with notice of default and notice of trustee sale. In non-judicial states versus judicial states, you're going to see different language like right to reinstate or public trustee sale. So we are a non-judicial state in California. We will go through our foreclosure process so that you guys are very familiar with it. And I think we've got a couple more terms here. Yeah, so cancel foreclosure. You want to, those are all pretty straightforward.
Let's go back to 2007, 8, and 9. Many lenders and servicers did not pursue foreclosures because they did not have the ability on a lender's side on a monetary basis. But the lender has the ability at any point in time to cancel foreclosure action. And they'll generally do that when there is an agreement for assistance with that homeowner. The trustee deed, and that's the deed that's recorded when your homeowner gets their loan. It's the deed that exchanges hands from seller to new buyer. And in this particular case, that is when the deed is transferred to a trustee in the case of a foreclosure. And foreclosure, when we all sign promissory notes when we purchase a home, that is that legal process when we are not able to make our payments, not able to pursue some type of agreement with our servicer, and the lender is able to pursue a legal action and collect on that property. Late fees. With COVID, most of the late fees were stopped by the servicers back in March, and we'll go into that more coming up, the difference between government-backed loans and non-government-backed loans. But if someone's not able to make their mortgage payment on the 1st of the month, it is considered delinquent with late fees as of the 16th of the month. The lender can charge penalties based on late payments for any type of loans. And you may find by having conversations with some of the homeowners coming up that they have a lot of fees and penalties on their loan, even if they're still affected by COVID.
So let's talk about whether or not your homeowner would qualify for deferment, forgiveness, or forbearance, and really, what that looks like. So as Amy mentioned early on in the talk, we have to have a valid hardship, right? They've got to be able to demonstrate that. Now with the CARES Act, all they had to simply say was that they were impacted by COVID, which meant that either they got COVID or somebody in their family got COVID, or they were a caretaker of someone that had COVID. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was literally sufficient.
Or their job was affected by COVID and they weren't able to go to work.
So the qualifying part is not as complex as it was, let's say back in 2007, where you actually had to demonstrate the hardship. In other words, you had to financially validate that you were unable to make your mortgage payment in order to advance the conversation to some type of loan modification, or in the case of a property that was underwater, a short sale. So we wanted to kind of just do a brief overview visually of the foreclosure process. And what we're doing is we're actually taking you through when the mortgage payment is due to when it actually goes to a trustee's deed recorded foreclosure. So this is non-judicial, which is the state of California. And we're simply saying, look, if the payment was due on April 1st, it's delinquent on April 16th. At the end of the first 30 days, the lender now is aware that they've got a challenge that they're working with. And, somewhere between April 1st and May 1st is when you want to contact the servicer. What you don't want to do is get to a servicer when you're beyond that 30-day payment, because now you're going to get escalated into either legal or the foreclosure department, and it has a different protocol of dealing with the delinquency. You want to expand on that at all? So in this range.
Yeah. When a lender, when you miss payments, they're going to send you out notices. When it's now at 90 days, they're sending out a notice that you're in default of your payments. You're in default of your agreement on that promise to pay. At 90 days, the net lenders are still sending notices out to you, but after the 91st day, it becomes really tough for the servicer to send a mortgage statement because they have to go to their foreclosure attorney to get additional fees and cost. At 180 days, that lender, you're in the foreclosure process, a sale date has already been placed on your property. Let me back up a second. On the notice of default, a legal notice had been filed on your title. And then when you're at notice of sale, you have a sale date on the property, and the lender intends to sell that property to recoup the money that is owed. Many many homeowners can make agreements with lenders to reinstate the loan, to do other things, but the lender does have that legal right.
So somewhere in that 90, 180 kind of time frame, this is where you'll see other kinds of strategies kick in, like people filing bankruptcy, right? As a means to stave off the foreclosure. When you move into this 90, 180 day range, you're no longer dealing with the standard sale of property, because you now have legal fees that have been attached to that borrower or that property, and you're now negotiating, right, some of those pieces before you can effect a sale. So one of the things you're going to hear Amy and I talk about is actually a new form of a short sale, only they're not short. So let's talk about that. Let's say in a situation where there's equity in the home, but they're in a forbearance or they're in a foreclosure process. There's still a negotiated process to get that home to effectively be sold on the market. And so we're kind of labeling it a forbearance sale. I don't know. We're going to have to create a new term for it, because it's going to require negotiating with the servicer to deal with them coming out of forbearance with any delinquent penalties or any legal fees that would be attributed, and know that that's something where you now want an expert that knows how to navigate through that process, if you will. So we'll dive into that towards the end of our talk. But so everybody's clear, this is the non-judicial foreclosure process. Here is a judicial foreclosure process. Doesn't really impact us here in California, but it's always good for you guys to understand what the difference is in how the foreclosure takes place. So usually in a judicial foreclosure state, we have court approval, and we have typically, but not in all states, the right to reinstate. So even when you buy a foreclosure in a judicial foreclosure state, you may have a period post the foreclosure where the previous owner has the right to reinstate. And so it tends to be a higher risk category from an investor perspective because of that right to reinstate. So it's just, again, information that you need to be aware of and be informed on. And we're not going to dive into that. Let's now talk about the difference between forbearance, deferment, and forgiveness. And I'll let Amy dive into that.
At the start of COVID, the lenders automatically placed people in a forbearance if somebody logged onto the website to say, I'm having difficulty making my payment due to COVID, or based on a phone call. And this is where the lenders agreed, due to the CARES Act, to give everybody 90 days of no fault. The payments were placed in a forbearance. They were not forgiven. They do not go away. But this is where March, April, and May, non-government backed servicers agreed to offer assistance. Generally, if you're in a hardship, you can call your lender and say, my husband just lost his job this month. I've got this, that, can I defer one payment? And that is where the lender agrees, where this, for the month upcoming for November, you don't have to make your November payment. We'll place it on the back end of the loan, and you start fresh making your December payment. Forgiveness, and let's take us back to 7, 8, 9. There were many second mortgages that were actually forgiven because there wasn't enough equity within people's homes. Forgiveness is where the lender agrees to take a balance and wipe it clean, because they're not necessarily for the homeowner, but they understand that property is never going to be able to bear the value for the person to actually ever pay it off.
Okay, so we're going to talk briefly about loan mod, but I think more importantly, what we want to do is just give you an update. So Amy and I were actually on a conference call with the head of Freddie Mac servicing about 3 weeks ago. And we were talking about, what is going to happen to these folks when they come out of forbearance. And so 2 things you as agents need to know, because people are going to ask you these questions. First and foremost, when their forbearance period ends, they are most likely going to get some type of advanced collection notice, like a notice of intent to foreclose. That's going to shock them, because they think that they've been in this forbearance program, right, as a means to get them through the hardship. And then the first thing they get from their servicer is a notice of intent to foreclose. Freddie said that they are going to try very hard to see if people will qualify for a loan modification. And they actually came up with a new term, like
Flex mod.
As a means of helping people solve the problem. But as you guys all understand and know, the challenge there will be, can they afford the payment?
Mhm.
Are they through the hardship? So if they're not through the hardship, or they can't afford the payment, the probability of them qualifying for a flex mod is going to be difficult. And so that's where we again go back to what are the resolutions, right? What are the solutions that we as an industry can provide to these people that are in distress? Anything you want to add to that?
June 1st, anyone that was in a non-government backed loan. So guys, we will say Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, government backed loans, but think of it this way. These are the homeowners that you help to get into a loan, and they might have been at 95% loan to value. They might have been at 90% loan to value. They might have had a first and second mortgage combo. So these are traditional mortgage lenders that you always see in the news. They immediately followed the CARES Act because it was the right thing to do. But traditional lenders generally have homeowners that are slow pay, trailing 30-day loan payments, 60-day payments, and they might have even been in that before COVID hit. So when COVID hit, the lenders came back and said, yes, automatically, we're going to follow the CARES Act. We're going to give you forbearance March, April, and May. If any of those homeowners were delinquent prior to March, they immediately would have received a notice of intent. And that was based on payment history. And anyone that was in a forbearance as of June 1st, that servicer would have sent out a letter to them saying either this is an intent to foreclose because of missed 90 days of payments, and please reapply and let's see how we can assist you. Government-backed loans, Fannie Freddie, automatically in June said anyone that's not able to make their payments, we will again extend the forbearance. So, we've got an inequality of what's happened with the servicers, but government-backed loans generally get a higher level of assistance. And that is why, they're able to extend that, from the government to extend it to the homeowners.
It's also important to know that the forbearance does not include a recasting or a re-amortization of the loan. So what that means is they're not extending the term, right? Or they're not rewriting the note. They're simply tacking on to the balance. So we know fast forward when we go through the next market downturn that we have 4.7 million homeowners that are in forbearance that have been accruing interest and balance that probably will push them to a potential short sale sooner than later. So let's talk about kind of the alternatives, right? When we look at helping someone that's in a distressed situation, this is kind of the path, if you will, to solving the financial problem, right? If they take no action, they're going to end up in foreclosure. If they can and are unemployed currently, they potentially could refinance. They have an option if things turn around for them post-COVID to potentially reinstate. The flex mod with Freddie and Fannie may be a short-term solution, which is to give them some type of payment relief for a period of time. And then as things get back to normal, they move back to a regular payment. Forbearance, we know that's already happening right now. Deed in lieu, those happen from time to time. They're not as prevalent as they have been in the past. Deed in lieu is where they simply walk away and say, please, we're going to give you back the property. We just don't want any negative impact. They're still going to have some negative impact to their credit. It just won't surface right away. Bankruptcy tends to be a stall tactic. It may stave off some action over time, but it's not a permanent fix. And obviously it definitely impacts their ability to qualify for a future mortgage. So then we get down to what we're here to do, which is how do we help them sell the property? So, I think both Amy and I have a belief that as real estate agents, our job is to help people understand what their options are. And if we know at the beginning that their option is they need to sell the property, it's being willing to have kind of the fierce conversation of this is the best solution for you now. It's the least damaging to your credit profile, and we can return you to home ownership. When you have returned to work or when you're back on the job or the income or employment situation has improved, we need to really be equipped to have these kinds of conversations. Anything you want to add to that?
You're good.
Okay, so where does a homeowner start?
They first have to contact their servicer. They cannot put their head in the ground and decide not to do anything. If somebody is in forbearances now, then they need to remain in contact with their servicer on a monthly basis, because at any point in time, the servicer can change their plans. And if the homeowner is not in contact with them monthly saying, I'm still out of work, my husband's still out of work, we're on unemployment, whatever is happening, if the servicer's plans change for that particular loan or loan pool, then they're going to get some news they don't want. But every lender has a website set up where someone can go online and ask for assistance and receive information. And right now there are more and more organizations that are out there that provide free services to any homeowner.
So at the beginning of COVID, Amy and I created a website called hardshipresource.com. It is a place where we have been compiling and placing current resources, information, and links for assistance. It is non-branded. It's not broker specific. It was designed just as a resource for homeowners to get information. You guys are welcome to go there. You're welcome. This class is actually hosted on that site for people to get information, as well as a daily news feed of the latest up-to-date information on what's happening with the CARES Act, with forbearance, and with mortgage relief. So let's talk now a little bit about the kind of the clock from a lender perspective, and what that clock kind of looks like if we go through the alternatives to solve a problem. So you want to talk a little bit about this?
The modification is when the homeowner is behind in payments or shows an inability to make their current payment, where the lender is going to work to try to modify their loan. It could be for a 3-month period of time. It could be for 6 months to 12 months, or it could be there is a determination that that homeowner's income will never return to that same income due to a disability, where they are going to work to modify that payment, modify that balance, and essentially it restarts their clock, that they're no longer delinquent and they can resume to making on-time payments. Loan modifications are the toughest thing that a servicer can offer. And there are offices across the country that are filled with hundreds of people, and these people are working from home at this point, but they just obtain homeowners' information and help to determine how they qualify for hardships and if they can qualify them for an affordable payment. In the past, if a homeowner was 90 days delinquent or more, it was tough for a servicer to do a modification because they would look to modify the loan based on that current rate of interest and maybe extending the term. Many times they're having to take a standard rate, which in the past used to be 6%. Now we're down to 4 and 2. And just think of it this way, guys. If somebody is at a 2% rate of interest in their loan, and now that servicer has to look to modify that loan,
Right.
how can they go below 2%?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, most of the servicers have not placed on their websites or even on the news everything that they are doing or even their strategies because they have not figured this out yet. Our servicers have never dealt with this level of a pandemic in missed payments.
So when we look at kind of these alternatives, right, the other thing that we're looking at is what's the impact to their credit and their ability to re-enter the market as home ownership. So, loan modification, least damaging to credit, short sale, next to least damaging, deed in lieu, it is going to show up on their credit and impact their ability to qualify for a future mortgage. It could be up to 5 years. Bankruptcy may extend the stay in the home, but it is also going to impact their credit and their ability to qualify for a future mortgage. And then, of course, foreclosure. So part of our role as agents is not necessarily to give advice, but to give access to information and kind of guide them through that process. We believe that helping people get back on track and get back into home ownership is part of what we do as agents, right? Which is to make sure that people are just really educated on what are their alternatives and what is the path to return to home ownership as quickly as possible. So I don't know that we're going to dive into this, right? Short-term, temporary. Yeah. So let's move on and talk about, and again, we're gonna just highlight loan modifications. This could be a class in and of itself and how loan servicers determine qualification. But we want you guys to be aware of the types of loan mods out there and kind of the math that sits behind it. And in short, what we will say to you is that every mortgage servicer has a calculator that they claim they don't have, that they have, which is how they arrive at this formula as to what an appropriate mortgage payment is as compared to disposable income and their overall expenses, right, in order to qualify them for a mod. But these are your standard types of mods. Do we want to dive into that other than they are what they are, right?
Yeah.
HAMP is a program that's no longer in place, but people are still using the Making Home Affordable guidelines as part of the modification.
As well as the Making Home Affordable standard forms on all the servicers' websites.
So let's move on because I think we dive into Making Home Affordable.
Right now, the traditional lenders, non-Fannie Freddie, they're offering homeowners in June, if the person contacted the servicer to ask for assistance, they are offering new trial periods. And this was the first type of modification that was done. What a servicer needs to find out, if I make a payment for a homeowner, can they make it? Can they make it 3 months in a row? And if they can make that payment successfully 3 months in a row, then they will award a modification. And when Shelly was talking about that calculator, the lenders are taking what is the current balance of the loan, what are their loan limits, and of course, what is delinquent on that loan, and adding them together and trying to make an affordable payment. Once somebody finishes a trial modification, they're generally offered a permanent mod.
So this is really the timeline or the sequence to qualify for a mod. And again, not something we want to do a deep dive on, but we want you to be aware of the process. It starts with talking to the servicer. You're actually providing financial information, reason for the hardship. And so that financial information could include things like pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, validating credit in order to actually qualify. They go through an underwriting process, not too dissimilar than qualifying for a mortgage, right? They're really looking for affordability in that new payment. As Amy just mentioned, the trial period typically has a defined timeline, and then you move into the final mod once the homeowner has proven capability of making those payments. We're going to jump that screen and we're going to talk about this.
In the past, when a homeowner asked for assistance, the homeowner had to prove why I'm not able to make my payments or why I'm behind, why my income has lowered. And under Making Home Affordable, the guidelines were the death of a spouse or the income provider, temporary loss of income, divorce, medical illness or disability, or an emergency situation.
So this is the type of documentation, again, not dissimilar from qualifying for a mortgage to qualify for a mod. More, we just want you guys to be aware of the amount of work that's involved.
One section in here, you see unemployment benefits letter. And in the past, a lender would not do a modification when someone was on unemployment. The reason is unemployment is not meant to last forever. And if somebody is on unemployment, in the past, they would either offer a trial modification or partial payment or deferment. But because they knew a homeowner would go back to work at one point, making different income, that they would wait until after unemployment ends. But we're going to be finding that the services are changing that because so many across the country are still on unemployment.
Sample hardship letter. By the way, this is the same kind of hardship letter that we would be using for a short sale, or what we're calling this new forbearance negotiated sale. And again, for those that are asking in the chat room, the PowerPoint and the recording will be shared with all of the attendees after the class. Okay, so we're going to actually skip this whole part. This goes into that calculator that I was talking about. This is purely for loan mods. So we're going to zip past the section. You'll have it when you get the PowerPoint to read it. We want to dive now into what is leading to this new form of short sale, which is, it may be a negotiated forbearance, or it may actually be a short, depending on the location. And we know clearly over time that short sales will be coming back. So just really understanding some of the terminology. And again, we're constantly reinforcing the language because that's really important to understand where somebody's at in the process. And most homeowners don't have access to or understand some of the terminology. So we always want to make sure that you're equipped to provide them with accurate information. So we've talked about this kind of process of loan mod to short sale versus deed in lieu and bankruptcy. Here's what I'm gonna say is that if you have somebody that's in distress and they know that they're not going to be able to manage their mortgage payment post forbearance, now is the time to get them to list and sell. If we wait until next spring or next summer, we might already start to see some compression in the market. We know right now that we have a shortage of inventory. And in some markets, we're down 40 to 50% in active listings over this time last year. And so there may be a situation where they could walk away getting more than what they actually thought they could get for their property. We certainly have experienced that in our marketplace, where we've sold homes in record time for more than list. And so it could be a way of helping people get back on their feet much faster. So we do want to make sure that everybody is up to speed on anti-deficiency statutes in a deed in lieu or in a walk away. The ability for a lender to come back after a homeowner for balance it owed. So traditionally on first mortgages, we're not going to see that in the state of California, but you may on certain types of second trust deeds or home equity lines of credit see deficiency language. And so again, part of our job is to help people understand when they might have a servicer come after them for the kind of financial responsibility.
Mhm.
So traditionally not on first mortgages,
Except for hard money loans.
But you will see this most commonly on a home equity line of credit. Not all, but we need to make sure that we read, because home equity lines of credit have a contract in addition to the deed. And so we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what the potential challenges could be in that case. Okay, so now we're heading into short sale, which is what a lot of us want to learn and understand better. So to us, a short sale, or this new forbearance sale, as we're calling it, is the easiest path to return to home ownership. It allows us to get them out of the house, get them out of the hardship, repair and reestablish their credit, and get them back in very quickly. And so it's really understanding when is a short sale a short sale.
Whenever there is owed more on the property, combined loans or liens on the property that will not allow the full payoff. So many properties could be a second mortgage short, could be an HOA short, could be additional liens short.
What about closing costs and commissions?
So if a lender in a short sale, just like a traditional sale, all cost of sale is included in the payoffs, as well as a real estate commission. Generally, the servicers will allow a full 3% on each side. And if the loan cannot pay off cost of sale, even just on a first mortgage short, then the lender will consider going short based on the value of the property.
So now we have a situation where it looks like they might have equity, but by the time you calculate the selling of the property, the cost associated with selling that property, and commissions, and maybe it is a delinquent HOA, which is very common right now due to COVID, or maybe they have a small second trust deed, or perhaps another type of lien that's surfaced on the property, an old mechanics lien or IRS lien, right? And when you add all of that up, if the sale of the property isn't enough to pay all that off, we technically have a short sale. And so just to give you guys a sense of our background when it comes to short sales, Amy and I have closed over 250 million in short sales in our career. Most of those were truly short. Some of those were unbelievably short. And we'll give you an example. We've had one property that had, I think it was roughly $30 million in liens on a property that was worth $7 million. And, we were able to, including attorney fees and the Department of Justice, and we were able to effectively negotiate those liens down and allow for the property to be sold so that what remaining portions that were left could be paid, and the sellers could move on. We've had cases where there have been $90 million worth of liens on a $5 million property. And so sometimes these are pretty, yeah, exactly, Jim. I see your notes. What the heck? Trust me, I dealt specifically with the Department of Justice on that. It was not fun, but I ended up making friends with him after several months of phone calls daily. We're pretty persistent. So we've done quite a few of these. We're not here to sell you anything, right? We're here to say, look, if you want to stay focused on your core business and you want to work with short sale negotiation, we're happy to assist you with that. That is one of the businesses that we have. We have a website for that called sellshortsale.com, where you can learn about Amy and I and the work that we do on the short sale negotiation side. That's the only pitch you're going to get from me today, because we really want you to be aware of the process and understand it. So here's the short sale process in a nutshell. And it's pretty straightforward, and it can be complex. And so let's talk about where it can get complex. What happens when the mortgage servicer doesn't own the loan?
They have to go to the investor to ask what is permittable. And the servicer is there to collect the payments and to assist the homeowner. The servicer is there to protect their investor. So it's the investor that identifies on all of these loans. So if we're talking Fannie, Freddie, government-backed loans, guess who the investor is? The federal government. That is why that level of assistance was immediately offered. And that's where the CARES Act came and trickled down.
So let me ask you a question. Of all the mortgage services out there, let's talk Wells Fargo, B of A, Mr. Cooper, right? How many of them actually own the loan? What would you say?
I would say lower than 25%.
Right. So now you have to understand, with a short sale, you're negotiating with the mortgage servicer, but they may not actually own the loan. So now I've got a first trust deed and a second trust deed, mortgage servicer, investor. You can see how short sales can be complex. And so again, our advice to agents are, if you're comfortable in this space and comfortable negotiating, go for it. I just think that some often some of these transactions that look like they're very straightforward and simple aren't. And to me, having a team that handles that, where I can focus on my core business, just makes a lot of sense. So this process, this path, if you will, is pretty straightforward, right? A short sale negotiation does not begin until a buyer offer is procured. You can fill out all the paperwork and gather all the documentation, but that negotiation does not start until a buyer offer is presented.
And it changes the way we generally do a real estate contract. The seller signs the contract as the seller of the property, giving permission to sell the property, but the seller is not in control of that transaction. And even though the buyer's agent is going to agree to contingencies, until that short sale lender issues approval on that short sale, the parties cannot or do not move forward. So they're not going to generally move forward with an inspection. They're not going to move forward. The buyer's lender is not going to move forward with an appraisal until the short sale lender identifies that property has been appraised and that contract can be sold for $550,000 or whatever it is.
So the other thing that's important to note in a short sale process is commissions can absolutely be earned and paid, right? And oftentimes how we negotiate is we have the buyer pay the negotiation fee so that the commissions stay intact. So short sales do not have to be discounted. And we think it's really important for agents to understand that you can walk away with a full 6%. It is not unusual, and the buyer typically is willing to pay the negotiation fee. The homeowner, the seller, however, can receive no thing of value. So it's really important that everybody understand if they're selling short, they can receive no thing of value. And the lenders will go to great lengths to validate that. And there are a lot of transactions out there where people like to sell furniture outside of escrow. And I'm just going to say, not something we would condone or endorse. We think that just is not worth jeopardizing your livelihood. Banks are very serious about fraudulent activity, and we're watching for it. So just proceed with caution. Mm-hmm. Know that your seller cannot receive anything of value if they're selling short.
When many short sale lenders and investors are still offering relocation assistance for the homeowner, and that could be anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000. It's not an automatic, and that is offered to help that seller and family relocate from the home. In the case where Shelly's discussing or talking about is your homeowner cannot come to you and say, if you're going to sell my home, Miss Real Estate Agent, I want to be able to make this from you. And that is where the seller is going to be signing, as well as the buyer, as well as all parties in the transaction are going to be signing affidavits that state this is an arm's length transaction. And if I'm the homeowner selling my property, the only thing I can walk away from the sale of the property is what is given to me by that investor for relocation. Now, the difference is anything that is in that seller's house does not belong to that servicer.
Personal property.
Personal property.
So let's talk about when the short sales are going to hit. Obviously, it's already happening in the country right now. Amy and I have seen short sale cases already start to surface in Los Angeles. In fact, we had our first short sale come earlier this year, which was surprising to us, but it happens. And again, in this case, it was a well-known actor that had over encumbered their property, which happens. And so just know that when you look at the heat map, and by the way, we update these both on sell, short sale, and hardship. We update these quarterly so that you start to see the trends, right? We'll start to see this in California. We think by second or third quarter 2021, we will start to see short sale surface. It may be sooner. I think the telltale months for us are going to be December and January, which is what's going to happen with all these folks when their forbearance programs end. Are the servicers going to extend, or will the notice of intent to foreclose escalate? From a real estate sales side, we still have a shortage of inventory, which is causing the compression, which is causing the prices to go up. I think we're still going to see some of that for a while, which is great for all of us, right? But the short sales will surface. It's just when. And so we want to make sure that everybody's educated about what they need to do to equip for that kind of business, market for that kind of business, because most agents really don't understand this process. And I can tell you this, that when you help somebody out of a hardship and you get them back into home ownership, you have a client for life. And it's really important to understand that you really have clients that will be extremely loyal. So here are some kind of key city indices about what's happening, whether they're expected to outperform or underperform from a marketplace. We can see that California is still showing relatively strong. And let's go back and look at kind of some previous numbers. in terms of foreclosure filings, notice of default filings. So here's the other thing that we didn't talk about, which is banks actually filing notice of defaults and notice of intent to foreclose on time. So Amy alluded to it at the top of our talk that in 2007, 8, and 9, banks delayed the process. And I think it's important as agents to understand why.
Mhm.
In order for a lending institution, a federally regulated bank, to file foreclosure, they have to set aside a reserve amount for that property. Typically, the reserve amount is 1.5 times the principal balance of the loan. So if you can imagine right now, we have comparable numbers to 2007, 8, and 9 in seriously delinquent or getting more delinquent status in forbearance today. If the forbearance ends on December and there's no relief for these homeowners, and we know that 42% of them are seriously delinquent, meaning past the collection process timetable, I think we're going to see some similar activity where the banks may not file some of these on time because they would be getting so hit with the number of delinquencies, right?
Remember back in 07, 08, and 9, the easiest way to describe this is you had a homeowner that you were selling their house, and in the process, they let you know they have not made a payment for 1.5 years. And you in your mind are saying, how is that possible that the lender has not filed the necessary or foreclosed at this time?
Yeah.
And that was due to the inability, the inequity within the servicers to be able to cover those payments. Now, under the CARES Act, Fannie Freddie came back, and the government-backed loans initially came and said, if the government-backed servicers only have to cover 4 months of those delinquent payments if those homeowners are delinquent. But that was not extended to non-federally backed loans.
Right. So we're just giving you some updated stats here. I think it's important to kind of see where we are. California is sitting in the medium range for foreclosure action. I think we'll start to see that tilt by the end of next year. So short sale process, again, we're going to go over some of the key terms. I think these are all pretty straightforward. Yeah, we're good on those. So insolvency. So IRS code 4681, by the way, we're happy to share this with you. It's a handout that the IRS gives. Again, it's up to the tax filer to report, and the burden of proof is on the filer. But this is kind of one of the key topics when it comes to short sale, around deficiency judgments or the right to forgive debt by the servicer when they're insolvent. Recourse and non-recourse loans, I think everybody should be somewhat familiar with that. This is a big one, cancellation of debt. So the 1099-C, they are going to get a 1099-C from their servicer on any debt relief in a short sale. That is a taxable event. And so going back to the IRS insolvency, right, is one of the ways to mitigate some of that taxable event. Again, burden of proof on the filer. But you need to be aware of some of the pieces of the things that come into play with short sale. The other thing that is somewhat new, we saw it happening at the end of the last down cycle, so 2009, 2010, is market validation. So a lot of the major servicers have moved to do online auctions as a form of market validation. And so you see big servicers like Mr. Cooper that have their own auction platform and may require that a short sale be posted on that auction platform to obtain buyer bids as a means of market validation. That's somewhat new, but becoming more prevalent.
Mhm.
So just know that that's an added piece to the complexity in the short sale ecosystem.
And as the real estate agent, if you have signed the listing agreement with the seller, that online auction platform will honor you as the listing agent.
Correct.
And it's not a big process to market the property. There are a few disclosures, but they will honor your commissions.
Okay, so I think we've already talked about that chart. Let's talk about this. So just the benefits, right? So the home seller avoids foreclosure. The buyer may get it at fair market or a slight discount. The seller, the servicer, rather, investor and mortgage servicer mitigates their losses. And then, of course, we as agents all participate in that ecosystem. So we all earn a profit and benefit from the short sale process as well.
Because the servicer guys are not real estate agents. They do not employ real estate agents in this particular transaction. So the lender does need a real estate agent to have the necessary forms and to participate.
So here's your baseline criteria, right? Homeowner cooperation, a documented hardship, which right now that's somewhat easy because COVID is extending to so many people. In the past, the loan had to be in default. That is not always a requirement. In this case, this new version that we're talking about, forbearance, they may have been current prior to their forbearance.
Mm-hmm.
And so through the forbearance, they have now accrued fees and charges and or accrued a balance. Inability to pay the current payment, that's pretty straightforward. And upside down. So upside down, we've just discussed, doesn't have to just be the first loan or the second loan. It could be other things that cause the transaction to be underwater. Here's the standard timeline for short sale. And I can tell you that this is really kind of both our thought process as well as, how do I want to say this? Something to be aware of. The faster that short sales can be negotiated, the more likely they are to close. When short sales are used as a stall tactic to stave off foreclosure and or are delayed by negotiations, whether it's experienced, not experienced, or just a difficult servicer, the longer they take to negotiate, the more less likely they are to close. Now, that's not the case with every short sale, but we found a way to compress the time frame. So if we look back at the previous cycle, most of our short sales were closed in under 90 days, and many of them in under 60 days. And it has to do with knowing how to present the package, what the servicers are looking for, knowing the difference between servicer to servicer, having high-level context to escalate negotiations when you need that assistance, and making sure you have a complete package. The number one thing for delay in short sale negotiation is incomplete documentation and or not understanding how to navigate through and negotiate with the servicer. Anything you want to add to that?
And not understanding what's lying on the title of the property that you're discussing with the seller. Anytime you are looking at a property, you always want to pull preliminary title because that is where the liens are going to show and anything that would have to be paid off with that property.
So let's talk about what it takes to get a short sale approved, right? And understanding the value of the property and being able to argue that. So having a BPO or an expanded set of comps understanding as Amy just mentioned, all of the liens on title, having a complete file, right, and validating the hardship and the inability to pay and or the underwater calculation. And then really making sure, so can we talk about your recent case? I think it's important to understand when we know we've got a short sale, but the servicer doesn't understand the value spread. In this case, it was Fannie Mae, right?
Yes, yes. And this case, it's an LA property. And the homeowner bought the property with the misknowledge that there wasn't a foundation issue. And the homeowner, fortunately, was living in another state, and tenants were living in there, and they actually flooded the property where they found out that there were huge foundation issues. The lender is always going to value the property. They're going to send out an agent, and it's typically an agent that is not an active real estate agent. They're only going to do BPOs. And because of the foundation issue, this BPO agent had to be hand walked through the property because it's not safe and should have been red tagged by the county. But the seller was doing what they thought was the right thing, to sell the property. And the property's been listed for sale, guys, for 1 year. It has been in escrow 4 different times before this current buyer came forward. And each time at inspection, the buyers have walked away due to the level of foundation issues. At this point, the problems on the property, non-liens, are almost $300,000, where the property has to literally be removed from its casings, replaced into the hillside in Los Angeles, and resecured. And it's a battle with Fannie Mae, essentially, to get them to understand the value. And the BPO agent valued the property based on an adjacent area, not the comparable property area.
So this is where homework makes all the difference, right? Being able to validate, even in the case of excessive repairs, contractor bids, photographs, those are all things that will help in your negotiation with the servicer. In this case, Fannie Mae was $100,000 apart from the buyer offer, and the sellers just chose to walk away, right? That doesn't happen in every case, but in this case, we just we're not able to get Fannie Mae to understand that we had an unsafe property hanging off the side of a hill, if you will.
And this is a case where the investor, they think, is always right, and the investor is incorrectly valuing the property. And at this point, the property is going to one of the public auctions to try to prove to Fannie Mae that the property value has to be lowered. So to be determined on that one.
Yeah. Some of the reasons why short sales don't go through, that's a great example. Right, where the servicer and or investor just doesn't get it. And so it's up to us to tell the story. We thought we did a great job. We did do the contractor bids. We did do the inspection, geo report. But you've got somebody inside the servicer that just, didn't connect the dots. And that does happen from time to time. Although I think that's probably the first one we've ever had where we couldn't effectively negotiate with Fannie. So title, issues on title, that would be a reason why it doesn't close. PMI from time to time will surface and cause problems with negotiation. Bankruptcy being used as a stall tactic sometimes will cause challenges with the servicer. We've not yet seen a servicer ask for a homeowner contribution. But
in their forms, there is a section that says, would the homeowner like to contribute?
Yeah. We've not ever had a servicer come back and ask the homeowner to pay, but that could be a reason for a short sale. So why are some more short sales more difficult? Well, the case that we talked about earlier with the $30 million liens on a $7 million house. the large portion of that, 13 million of that was Department of Justice. Another portion of that were attorney fees from a court case. And so, you know, you have to get all lien holders to agree to the short sale. And then you have to get all lien holders to agree to what they're going to get. And it's a pecking order. So first trust deed, always going to get the lion's share. Second trust deeds going to get reduced. Sometimes second trust deeds get wiped out. In the case of multiple liens, in this case, we had a first, a second, attorney fees, DOJ, and a bunch of other mechanics liens that were tied to it. It's really just going through saying, look, you can get what you can get or get nothing, right? Because if it goes to foreclosure, the first trust deed isn't going to cure all of those other liens. And so it's a dance that you do with lien holders, and then working with Fannie or Freddie or other investors. So just be aware that when you're going to a Wells Fargo or a B of A, they may or may not own the loan. When you're going with a mortgage servicer, there may be multiple investors attached to that loan that need some type of approval before everyone passes on what they're going to get and approves the short sale. So from a seller perspective, here's the 3 things that we just want to make sure that sellers understand, right? Anti-deficiency, probably not going to happen on a first trust deed unless it's hard money. Most likely will be there if it's a home equity line of credit. Certain types of investment properties also have deficiency. IRS cancellation of debt, right? The 1099-C, and then just the impact to their credit, the credit limits, and future ability to qualify. So there are other repercussions to a short sale that may not surface immediately. When a short sale surfaces in a credit profile, it may impact the credit limits on credit cards, their ability to qualify for an auto loan. And those are just kind of after the fact repercussions. So again, it's important that everybody is educated about what potentially could happen in a short sale. Now, I can say that today short sales are far less impact credit than they were, 7 years ago, 10 years ago.
They're more common.
And even the same with forbearance, right? So a lot of lenders will want someone coming out of a forbearance to be current for 3 months before they'll let them refinance. So let's say the forbearance ended and they were back on track and back on their feet. That lender may require at least 3 months of on-time payments before they can qualify for a mortgage. So it's not just shorts, it could be impacting people in forbearance. So here's what we recommend for real estate agents is get a professional team together. Make sure that you've got a CPA or tax advisor that is familiar with short sales, that you can refer clients to. As agents, we cannot give tax or legal advice. So we need a team of professionals that we can make available to refer our clients to so that they can get that advice directly from an expert. So a bankruptcy attorney, a CPA or tax advisor, an insurance agency. These would be all kind of critical people that we would want to make available to our clients so that they understand what they're navigating through. And then we will, let's see, do we want to do a deep dive?
You've done a lot of that.
Yeah, I think we've talked about a lot of this. So we're going to move on. I want to make sure we have ample time for Q&A. So getting back on track, this is really where we have defined a sequence for homeowners. We're happy to share this sequence with you, right? Which is to guide them through what they need to do to get back into homeownership once they have done a short sale. It's been our experience that when you give people a blueprint to follow, they will follow it, right? And so we want them to do simple things like set up a credit alert profile, so that they're tracking what's happening to their credit report post the short sale. And in this case would be post the forbearance sale, right? So that we are managing getting that credit profile back on track, getting them in front of credit repair agency in case there's anything that was erroneously reported during the short sale, so that we can get those things argued, mitigated, and off their credit report. Make sure that there weren't any lender notes or servicer notes that might impact the overall profile. So we want to understand what the credit profile is. Working with a mortgage lender to lay out a plan of what down payment they will need, what credit score they will need, and how quickly they can qualify for a new mortgage. These are all kind of critical pieces to this blueprint of getting them back on track. Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, getting the homeowner to understand they're in a non-performing asset, which is the current home they're in.
Yeah.
And giving them the key to follow to be able to get back to home ownership.
So I think that covers everything that we wanted to cover. These are kind of standard lending guidelines and the impact to the actions that we talked about. Many of you have your own mortgage lender that you're working with. Make sure that you're up to speed on their guidelines so that you know how quickly from a short sale versus a foreclosure versus, a bankruptcy, that we can get them back into home ownership as quickly as possible. This we're going to kind of skip through. This will be in the PowerPoint. Here's all the resource links that we want you to have to make available to your homeowners. Each one of these links, depending on the kind of loan they have, will be resources for them to tap into for assistance, for information, even to what kind of loan they have. And the nonprofits that are there to assist homeowners that are either being discriminated or just guiding them to where they need to go to get assistance. And so this will all be kind of included. We've also included kind of an FAQ section for you guys to share with your homeowners. But what I'd like to do now is open this up to any questions that you guys have. We now have ample time to address those. And we also would like to thank you all for attending. Again, to remind you two things. This workshop is on Udemy. Let me type that in for those of you that are not familiar with Udemy. Udemy is a learning platform globally. Amy and I have had almost 1,200 students come through this exact same course that are homeowners across the country. So we know that people are finding the information valuable. The short sale negotiation site is sellshortsale.com, which is right there. And then I think somebody already shared hardship resource. So any questions?
And in that, let me tie on to what Shelly was saying before the questions start.
I think we got somebody speaking. Somebody's mic on? Oh,
I think for Pauline, she's going to go through the Q&A. Pauline, you there?
Yeah,
I'm
I got
here.
it.
Yes, Shelly, there's a question from Jim Vaga. He's asking, are services doing cash for keys again?
That is one of the resolutions that they will offer. Right now, and let me tie it into what I was going to say, is the old adage, everyone on this call, you're not going to know your homeowner is going to want to sell their property until another agent's sign is in front of their property. So right now, they're not going to come to you to ask questions. Right now, send information out to the homeowners as to some of the resources that are available in your community to help a homeowner that might need help that you don't know. we're coming up the holiday seasons. It's food, it's clothing, it's resources. But one of the best ways of getting yourself in front of them is, have you thought of what your home is worth? How much do you think your home is worth? Different type of marketing. People are going to start calling you and ask questions, and then you can be that single level expert on helping them to guide them through the resources they need to ask the servicer the important questions, or to be that resource to get them out of a troubled situation.
Yeah, and I would say, please feel free to mention that we've got, hardship resource is a resource. It's not there to generate leads. It's there to get folks help. That content is on the website and it's free, right? It's really designed to get people educated. Let's see what else we've got coming in. I've got a question. Was mentioned deferred monthly payments are not amortized, but tacked on
to the balance.
So how is that structured to be paid by the buyer? My hope, yes, it does make sense. So it's not a second loan. They're not recasting the note. They're not re-recording a deed. They're simply adding a balloon payment onto the principal balance. Many servicers are not charging late fees or deferred interest, but they will take any of those missed payments and create a balloon. Nanette, I hope that answers your question.
But guys, it's not an automatic. It's going to be a case-by-case basis per borrower, per servicer. So many servicers will offer that ability if someone's 3 to 6 months beyond, to try to place that balance onto the back end. Meaning, if I owed $500,000 and I had $30,000 in delinquency, when I pay my loan off, now I owe $530,000, and they'll make it so that their payments restart at their existing payment amount in a few months. But not all servicers are saying they are doing that.
Yeah. So Frankie, the best time for a homeowner to contact is before they're delinquent, right? They know they're in a hardship. They can validate that today with just COVID, right? Better to get in before they're delinquent, because the options made available to them are far more lenient and attractive than post delinquency. It's much more difficult for us to clean it up when they're 60 or 90 days late, which is why we're so concerned right now. We've got 4.7 million mortgages in forbearance. Over half of those are over 90 days delinquent. And we just see that as being a really big challenge. There isn't a balloon term, Nanette. It's just tacked onto the balance, meaning it's just going to take them longer to pay it off, and or at some point when they do, well, I guess when they pay off their note, there would be a balance due.
There would be a balance due.
There'll be a balance due at the end of their term.
Yeah, and original modifications, and my background in servicing, original modifications had balloons, and those balloons would come due before the modifications ended, and that's what got a lot of homeowners in trouble. But what the lender will do, and if you see a mortgage statement that is in any type of a modification, it's going to show the current balance in which the homeowner is making payments on, as well as a deferred balance that when a payoff demand was ordered by that servicer, it would have the full amount.
So
should we troll?
Jim, that's not a bad idea. No, look, I would start to I would start to address this in your marketing, right? If you guys are doing mailers, talk about hardship, right? If not to your farm, I guarantee you, your folks that you've helped in the past have somebody in their fold that's in distress, right? And so, it could be something as simple as, are you experiencing a hardship? We have resources here to help. We have information here to help. And oftentimes it's just that, to open up the dialogue of, what are their options? Or in a hardship, curious about what your options are. Or are you behind on your mortgage? Any one of those would be lead-in conversations, whether it be via email or mail. to your farm or to your past clients. But this is a perfect time to reach out to people, especially anyone that you've sold a home to, right? To share with them this knowledge base that you have that can be of assistance. And I think now is the time, right? Why let's not wait until next year. Let's not wait until third quarter or second quarter when it's damage is already done. We can help somebody get back on track now.
Mhm.
And by the time we get through this, they'll be back in home ownership.
Mhm.
And which is the ideal scene, right? We're here to help people achieve that.
And we all know to market the hot list, and that generally are the homeowners generally ready to sell for whatever reason. Those are always identified, when we're looking to get market list. But in this case, the COVID has hit anyone from a CEO down to an Uber driver.
Yeah.
So the hot list kind of gets thrown out the window, and it just becomes a general marketing that you are offering assistance.
So we've
Can I
got,
help you?
I think we got Nancy on, right? So look, talk to your title rep, make sure that they get you the hot list for your farm, right?
Mhm.
The people that are statistically ready to sell. My guess is that, many of those folks are experiencing a hardship, and now you uniquely are able to have a different kind of real estate conversation, which is that we have resources and folks that are willing to help you get back on track. Any other questions? Pauline, I think we rounded it out at a perfect 1 hour and a half to the minute.
Perfect. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. And Shelly, do you want to share your contact information again? If
Sure.
our folks, they want to have a further contact with you. Yeah.
I'm going to give you both my email address and Amy's email address. It's really easy. It's our first and last name.
Shelly at shellycofini.com. Amy at amysessner.com. Just remember their name, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
We're here to answer any questions. If you have clients that need someone to talk to and you're not yet confident, remember, if we're your short sale negotiator or forbearance negotiator, we'll get on the phone with you and your client, drive them back to you for your services, but answer those complex questions and actually give them some answers on what they need to do to move forward. Amy and I both act as advocates in that space for agents throughout the state. So we're happy to do that for you guys as well. We appreciate the opportunity to share this work with you. As you can see, we're committed. It's on Udemy for free. It's on YouTube for free. It's on hardshipresource.com for free, because we want to make sure that people get through this hardship and have a game plan.
Well, what a fabulous section. You definitely agree with me, right? And thank you very much, Shelly and Amy, for your time and your wonderful presentation to us. The world has changed, but we can still compete and thrive with your teaching today. Thank you for your time with us today. We hope to see you in person soon. And this is just beginning stage, right? We're gonna to face and experience more difficulty, complications, situation. I believe at that time, you definitely can give us more idea and just assist with us, go together with this processing. And on behalf of Western Gabriel Valley Realtors, we would like to thank Ms. Shelly Cofini and Amy Sessner again for your wonderful and valuable presentation to us. And a reminder, tomorrow, 11 o'clock, is another great section class, How to Price a Land Project and Assess Land Value by Vincent Zhou. And this Friday, 10 to 12, is our first ever virtual broker symposium. We have 3 great speakers to give you all of updates regarding real estate industry. We want to thank you, Shelly, Amy, again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank
this
you so much.
session, thank you. And
Thank
this
you.
meeting is now adjourned. We'll see you tomorrow, 11 again. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you for
Thank you.
Bye.
joining class today together. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.